Hello everybody, Joe here with Garden of Luma. In today's video, I'm going to take you guys on a backyard tour and show you guys everything I have growing in my backyard. And I'm going to do a two-part video here, make it a little bit longer for you guys this time. Usually I just kind of breeze through it and show you guys everything, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about each individual tree as I go. Well, just to give you guys a little background, so Garden of Luma here started in winter of 2016 when we purchased this house. I am in the Phoenix, Arizona area, growing zone 9B, and most of the things in the ground I planted in that winter of 2016 or spring of 2017. I brought some of these trees with me from my previous residence. So my oldest trees are around that 2016 year mark. And then I've slowly just added a couple things here and there every year since. So just to give you guys some perspective on the age of a lot of these things, a lot of the in-ground trees are about 4 years old right now. So let's go check it out. I wanted to start by giving you guys just a quick panoramic view of my yard, just to give you guys more perspective of the space and what it looks like. So my backyard is about, I'd say, 4,000 square feet total. So I am not working with a very big space back here. And forgive me for the mess in the yard. I have 4 young kids as well, so it can get a bit messy back here. But here you go, just to give you guys a view of where everything is, how everything's laid out. Down here you can see one of my candestil seedlings. This is one of 3 that I have. 2 are in the ground, 1 is in a container. And so you can see that there. It's getting a little beat up from the sun. You can see some of the leaves are kind of sunburnt a little bit, but overall, you know, doing fine. Here is my Tikal sapodilla. And this has been flowering for the last month or so. I've been trying to cross-pollinate this with my Silas Wood sapodilla in hopes that maybe that'll help with pollination. You can see some of the flowers there. See if I can get around here to show you some more. See, this thing has had quite a bit of flowers on it, as you can see. And they're kind of wrapping up now. So I've been looking to see if anything has set fruit yet, but I haven't seen any fruit as of yet. It's too hard to tell so far, so we'll see. Keep an eye on it. Hopefully I will get some fruit on this thing. I did have one from last year that I harvested around May of this year, and I did harvest it just a little bit too early. It had some flavor to it, but it wasn't fully ripe. And this Tikal tends to flower multiple times a year. It usually flowers in the spring and then towards the end of summer, early fall. Here is my Bradenton loquat tree. And this is doing really well. I had a nice crop of loquats this year for the first time. This I planted in fall of 2017. So it is about 3 years old. I had fruit the second year, but I only had a couple fruit on it. And this past year I had probably about 30 to 40, so a decent amount. Really tasty fruit. Loquats take a little bit of babying to get them started here with our extreme heat, and if they get too much sun they can burn. But after that, I mean, you can see here, it looks fine. I don't protect it. It does get some shade, as you can see from the ash tree here, but the sun comes up top over there, over this roof line in the afternoon. So it does get hit pretty good with some afternoon sun, and it's looking good. Here is my Silas Wood Sapodilla, and you can just see from here, this has been loaded with flowers as well. And like I said, I've been using a paintbrush to go back and forth between this and the Tikal, trying to cross-pollinate this year. Last year I tried the squeeze method that I saw on YouTube, another video where you just squeeze the blossoms, and supposedly that's supposed to help pollinate. I did not get any fruit set by doing that. So this year I'm trying to cross-pollinate. And this Silas Woods here, you can see has grown really nice here. It is in a container as well, as you can see down below, a 30-gallon container. And this is supposed to fruit prolifically at a young age, so pretty much immediately, but I have not seen that here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. Have not had any fruit set on this as of yet, so I'm hoping this is the year that I'll finally get some. And in more tropical places like, you know, South Florida, I've heard that this flowers pretty much year-round and fruits year-round. Here, this one only flowers for me, or has only flowered for me in the spring, whereas my Tikal flowered multiple times. Back behind it here, I have my Indonesian seedless guava. And as you can see, it's kind of leaning there, trying to grow out towards the sun there. It is in quite a bit of shade here. I put this in the spot because this tree was kind of finicky for being a guava. Most tropical guavas, the pink and the whites, those types of varieties, do really well here in sun, even in full sun. Whereas this Indonesian variety, for whatever reason, was kind of getting beat up. And I had been growing it in a container for quite a while. And I believe it was last year I put it in the ground. I tried the fruit on this once. It only fruited one time a few years back, and the fruit tasted awful. So that's kind of why I just threw it back in this spot here. I was just like, whatever. And I have not had any fruit on it since. It flowered a little bit about a month or so ago when all my other guavas flowered, but it didn't set any fruit. So I'm hoping to get another chance at tasting the fruit on this at some point. But yeah, I mean, the first time it literally tasted to me like dish soap. So I don't know what happened or what was going on, but hopefully it'll taste better the next time around. And you can see on these guava leaves, they look a little different too than the other varieties. They're more rounded, the leaves, whereas the other guavas are a little bit more pointed. So that is the Indonesian seedless guava. I've actually heard a lot of good things about the flavor and taste of this guava too. So we'll see what happens. Okay, down here in the ground, you can kind of see there, these green leaves. This is my lemon drop mangosteen. And so if you followed any of my videos and checked this one out, this one I started from seed last year, and as you can see, it hasn't done a whole lot. It's still green, it still appears to be alive. I did put it in the ground towards the end of this winter. I believe it was March I planted this in the ground here just to see how it would do. It didn't seem like it was doing much in the container. Still doesn't seem like it's doing much in the ground. I don't think it's really grown at all, at least visibly. Maybe the roots underneath are. But there it is, the lemon drop mangosteen, extremely slow growing here in the desert, but it does still seem to be alive. Okay, so here is my mess of blackberries here. This is a Rosboro blackberry variety. It is a thorny variety. And I initially tried to trellis. You can see some of the wires back there, but they blew over in the winds, and I just didn't do a very good job of it. So I've just kind of let this go and do its own thing here. And they're just sprawling out wherever. And I haven't done really any pruning as well in here, other than pruning the tops for the laterals to grow. But otherwise, you can see some of the dead canes in there just kind of doing their thing. So whatever, I've just let this do whatever it's gonna do. Had a nice crop of blackberries this year on it. Here is my Subao white sapote, and as you can see, it's growing here more like a little bush, but it has been putting out a lot more growth over this past year than it did the first 2 or 3. It was extremely slow growing at first for a while, and I was debating just whether or not I should just yank the thing because it wasn't really doing much anything. But this past year I'm seeing it fill out a lot more, so I do have more hope for this thing. And one of the big concerns I have had with it is just the lack of sun it gets here, because everything around it, as you can see, has really outpaced this tree here, so it really isn't in a very good spot for it. It does get sun through here in the afternoon, and then sun through here in the early morning hours, but still I don't think it's getting quite enough. And then you can see it looks a little bit rough right now, and this is pretty typical in June. The sapotes here, the white sapotes, get pretty beat up looking. You may see yellowing, dropping leaves around this time when we get really hot and dry. It's pretty normal for this tree to do that during this time of the year. So I know when I first started growing white sapote at my previous residence, I was really concerned when I saw that in June, and I was, am I watering it right? What am I doing? What's going on? And then come to find out, that's just kind of the normal growth habit for these trees here in the desert. Here is my red hybrid Jaboticaba. This was purchased as a small seedling starter plant in April of 2018, so it's going into its 2nd year, and it's starting to fill out really nice here. As you can see, really healthy green new growth on this. And one of the unique things about this for me is I planted it in almost straight peat moss. So this is pretty much all peat in the soil here. And the reason for it is this likes to stay wet most of the time. It isn't bothered by being overly wet. It wants to stay moist. So the peat moss tends to hold that moisture in. Typically, anytime I plant a fruit tree in a container like this, I would not recommend soil that holds a lot of moisture. You definitely want drainage for your fruit trees in containers. But for the Jaboticaba, since it likes to be moist, I used peat, and it likes more acidity. So the peat moss tends to be more acidic, and I use acidic fertilizer for this. I almost treat this like I would a blueberry plant. And as you can see, it's doing really nice here. This is supposed to fruit quicker from seed than a regular Jaboticaba. I believe it's supposed to be 3 to 5 years from seed versus like 7. So hopefully in a couple years this will be big enough to start fruiting. Right next to it is, this is a Black King Kong wax apple. And this is a newer tree. I got this actually as a gift from a viewer, sent this to me, which was really nice of them. And I really still haven't studied too much about this, but it is doing really nice. You can see the new growth on the ends here, and it's been growing pretty steadily here. I know this tree likes a lot of shade here in the desert, so I've kept it in a fairly shaded place, but it's still getting a decent amount of sun. You can see the sun coming through here this morning, and then it gets some afternoon sun, so I wasn't sure if it'd be too much, but so far it's doing really good here. So I'm just gonna continue to monitor it, but overall, it is putting out a good amount of growth and continuing to grow steady through the hot summer here. This was started last year, 2019, in towards the end of summer, so it's actually in its first full summer here in the desert. Here is my soursop here. You can see I have a chair around the container. You can see the container down there. Just because the winds tend to blow this tree over all the time, so I'm using that to help stabilize this. So far it's helped. We haven't had too many strong winds this year so far, which has been good. But now that we're moving into monsoon season, we tend to get more of those high winds. Well, you can see how awesome this thing looks here, really green. It gets a fair amount of morning sun, but really this grows pretty well here in the desert for being an ultra tropical type of tree. It's going into, I believe it's 4th year now. I've grown this from seed, and all these annonas grow really steadily throughout the year, especially in the warm months. So there it is, the soursop, no burn on it, really green. As long as you're giving it some shade in the afternoon, especially, want it in a good microclimate. You can see I got a lot of foliage and other things around it here to protect it. But overall, it'll do well as long as you're protecting this in the winter months. So it's not going to be something that you'll be able to keep in the ground here just because we get too cold. So it'll need to go in a container and moved indoors or protected in our cold snaps that we get. Otherwise, it does really well. Have not had any blossoms on this yet, and getting these to fruit is the challenge here with our lack of humidity. But really, really beautiful looking tree.